Welcome to the ninth episode
Nice.
of Vital Question. As always, I'm your host, Che Guerrero, with
La co-host.
We got a special treat for you today. We're not going to take long to get right into this, so let's just do it. Are you ready?
Yeah, super excited.
We have our first guest.
Woo! Wait, that sound effect.
Our first guest, very happy that they're here. This person is the deputy director of the Florida Immigrant Coalition. I knew I was going to get that wrong. Let me do that again. The Florida Immigrant Coalition. You should look them up. FLIC. We have a deputy director here. Let me bring up Renata Bozzetto. Hi, Renata. How are you?
Hello. How are you?
Good. Now we got you. We had a little technical issue on the first try.
Yeah, we're good. I'm very excited and honored to be your first guest.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for taking time out, I'm sure, of what is a very busy schedule nowadays to come and speak with us.
I know. Talking to friends is good, right? So it's a good opportunity for us to connect and even decompress a little from everything that is going on our list. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is. I actually just got back from like a conference where I actually got to speak to other people who are in this line of work. And it felt good to realize like, oh man, we are all feeling the anxiety. We're all feeling the burnout, but we're also all pretty much feeling like we really need to be within community, help each other out, be there for each other. How can we lend a helping hand to our neighbors? So, as much as, it is chaotic right now, it is great to see people like yourself and other organizations really out there trying to, not go into the darkness so easily. We're going to fight, and that's what we're going to do. So tell us a little bit about, yourself, how you got into this line of work and a little bit about FLIC.
Sure. So I am Brazilian. I came to the United States good 20 something years ago. To Florida, and I've been calling Florida home. My family is here. I got married here. I attend college here. I got children who were born here. So my everyday life is not different from the everyday life of my neighbors. But yet, I feel that as we are navigating this place that we call home, we all aspire to contribute, to participate, to support our neighbors in a way that uplifts us all, right?
Yeah.
And back in 2010, the youth movement started having conversations nationwide about the dreamers, right? Children were brought to the United States by their parents. They were minors when they entered the United States. But as they aged, they became youth and they started trying to go to college. They start realizing that they did not have a regulated immigration status. So, and I had friends in this situation, and seeing that really bothered me. Having to know dreamers and being around dreamers. And we were going to college together and trying to figure it out how to be in college, right? So I became more involved with immigrants' rights. Eventually, my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, saw a protest that FLIC was hosting in front of the Muse office, demanding DREAM Act. And that's how I found out the organization and have been volunteering and participating ever since.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And thanks to your husband for bringing you in. That's amazing.
No, that was that. I think we're going to stay around.
What a cute thing to be like, to have that sort of, in common.
Yeah.
Like, we're both going to fight for justice like that. That's amazing.
That's awesome.
And, what's crazy, you're mentioning, you got into the movement in, around 2010 when a lot of the dreamers were starting to, come out of the shadows and say, we demand more. And, that I think that was a time also when DACA might have also, right? Because DACA was like 2012. So that came out of those kind of movements and things like that. And it's amazing to see, unfortunately, 14, 15 years later, how even dreamers, as we call them, dreamers, young people who were brought here, are not getting that same support that they were getting about 10, 15 years ago. And it's really heartbreaking to see just the public discourse just change so much in 15 years in the wrong direction.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I think it's very frustrating is that it's not that our public opinion shifted regarding youth that's
Mhm.
college, that it's trying to enter the professional environment and do good, right?
Mhm.
We did not shift our values. What we see is that national media and public policy and politicians that want to really pray and galvanize people against each other, they keep focusing on this very exceptional, um, real exception stories of crime and small
Mhm.
cases vis-a-vis, when we have a population of our neighbors who are here every single day trying to do things for their family and for their communities. So I think that the attention, the media attention, and the conversation about immigration changed, but our values remain the same. So
Mm.
as a community, to find our way back to sanity,
Mhm.
to find
Mm.
back to remember that, wait a minute, what we see, our neighbors, they are not what people are talking about. Our neighbors are much more than that. So adding this to the conversation, I think is where we need to go back to.
That is a very good point because, like, this weekend we were trying to figure out how do we combat all the negative rhetoric because, you know, it's difficult. We could highlight 1,000 positive stories of, DACA recipients, dreamers, parents who are working, things like that. But the right is so good at just taking one isolated incident of something that happened in the community and making the narrative that. And that's such, it's such propaganda. It's so disgusting that they're able to try and demonize all of us because of the actions of one.
Yeah. And that is right there the most uh, blatant representation of what a stereotype is, right? You
Hmm.
get one case and you believe that this represents an entire community. And that is so dangerous because not only our human lives are complex and we have different as, aspects of our everyday life, but also immigration policy is incredibly complex.
Yeah.
So there is this stereotype not only about what an immigrant looks like, but also what makes an immigrant, and the stereotype of this the idea, right, this false idea that people can just get in line and get their
Yeah.
things. So much for us to unpack, Chi. So much.
Yes. People don't realize it takes a long time.
And it's a tough process. So Renata, I was wondering if you can share a little with our listeners about FLIC, the Florida Immigrant Coalition, and the work that you all are doing there. Just really high level. So it's for those who haven't heard of the organization before, I think it'll be really helpful.
Sure. So FLIC is a statewide organization. We are a coalition, which means that we have 85 other organizations that are members of FLIC.
Oh.
And those organizations, we have youth groups, climate justice organizations, reproductive justice, labor unions, lawyers, who come
Mm.
together with the goal to make Florida a true home for immigrants and all. So we have FLIC was first founded in 1990 and we became a formal organization in 2004. So we already are celebrating our 20 years. Um,
Amazing.
I know. Hey, FLIC was founded in Miami, but
Mm,
Okay.
today we are statewide. We have not only presence across the state through our team, but
mhm,
also our members. And we are an organization that it focuses on three main things.
Mhm.
One, to make sure that policies that are passed in the local, state, and federal level allows for our people to live with dignity and thrive.
yeah.
So we work with issue advocacy, always nonpartisan, and but absolutely pro immigrant. And then we have another branch, which is education. We want to make sure that our new Americans, right, our new neighbors understand, are civically engaged, they understand our processes, they are able to be fully integrated and included. And then our third branch is our direct services. We provide legal consultations. Everything that we do is free of charge, it's pro bono. We provide legal consultations. We have a hotline. We also have mutual aid in case of disasters. So this hybrid of policy services, but always our goal is to connect the community.
That's beautiful. And it's a nonprofit, right? So funding usually comes from grants or is it private donors, especially with everything that we're seeing with this administration and, funding,
Well, that's
unfortunately.
what my next question was going to be. Like, how has funding been for you? Because everything you're saying, I'm like, this all sounds amazing, but I'm like, how much does the government hate this right now?
Right.
Like everything that you're doing, going against its policies, trying to educate people, which is, know your rights. Has become a hot button topic, So how is your funding coming along? What are some difficulties you're seeing under this administration?
Yeah, so our work is primarily funded by private donors. And several of our clients, individuals who come to our citizenship clinics, to our TPS clinics, they end up joining a paid forward program, meaning they don't pay anything, but once they receive our communications or they see our newsletters, they chip in $5, they chip in $20, which comes out, right? It's a paid system. We are not funded by the government. We don't have any government dollars that we receive. However, our members who provide services to youth, legal representation, pro bono, lawyers, child care facilities, right, that serve immigrant youth, groups that provide language justice, all of those, unfortunately, they are suffering with the policies particularly at the federal government.
Oh, that's unfortunate. I mean, fortunately, FLIC isn't being affected, but there are so many other organizations and individuals that are trying to help. And you would think that even at bare minimum legal representation for children, which I feel like everyone under the sun should understand, and it shouldn't be controversial, even that somehow has become a point of controversy and has become an issue for administration. So it's really heartbreaking.
I heard that a lot more law firms are not doing pro bono work for immigrants for fear of retaliation from the government. There was a guy who got fired for giving advice to an immigrant who it wasn't fully represented, just a lawyer, and he goes like, "Hey, I have a question about immigration." The lawyer told him, "Hey, this is some free, friendly advice," and his company found out he did that, and they fired him.
That's ridiculous.
So it's
right. Let's talk about this. It's like we all have the right to due process. Right? Protects our right to due process. But in order for us to have that right and to access it, very often we need legal consultation. We need to talk to an attorney so we understand, like, who am I to understand the mumbo jumbo that lawyers is saying, right? I trust them. And the fact that we are in a moment that access to legal counsel is being denied to people, it's so troublesome. It's really bad, and this should not be the case. Children, right? Let's talk about that. We are in a moment where the federal government attempted to remove access to legal counsel for children. Going to court and having to defend their case or be expelled from the United States or be imprisoned as a minor without speaking the language, without understanding the mumbo jumbo. Like, which kind of value is this, right?
Yeah. No, and especially like, that's why we wanted to talk to you about like somebody who's in Florida, because Florida seems to be sort of leading the way into the worst instinct that the Trump administration eventually wants to get into. They're like essentially like just give us a little bit of what you're seeing. I know I'm asking for too much right now. Just like what do you see on the street, especially like with just random stuff. We saw this last week where there were 1,100 people who allegedly were detained. The numbers are still very all over the place. So tell us a little bit about maybe something as being somebody who's worked with a lot of organizations, what you've heard about that operation, which is called Operation Tidal Wave. And yeah, and just what did they do to try and bypass people's rights? If you know anything that you can inform us on.
Wow. So there are a couple things that we can talk about Florida. I've been trying to figure it out how to name what's happening in Florida.
Mhm.
Even as we think like, is Florida leading the way or is Florida clogging the way? Is Florida creating problems for the entire nation as being an incubator of bad ideas?
I like that last one.
I like that one.
I think we
like
should
that.
go with the last
You know
one.
what? I think that's a great one. Yeah.
We say a lot of the things that we are seeing at the federal level, they were tested in Florida. Implemented with the policy that passed in the state in 2023, that was a very comprehensive anti-immigrant package, SB 1718. One of the provisions was revoking funding for organizations that issue community identification cards. Community identification cards, IDs, that our neighbors use to get access to a library card to prove that they are who they are, right? To pick up their kid in school. A community identification card issued by an organization that would check a birth certificate, would check a passport, and would print that identification card to people.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2023, Florida revoked that funding. So Florida has been implementing some things that we are seeing at the federal level. The tidal wave and this exacerbated policing, harassing, interrogating, identifying, detaining people at scale for everyday things. We're not talking about violent crimes. Right. We're talking about people being caught because their car headlight is malfunctioning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This, which is for an average American, a simple occurrence that you go to your mechanic and you fix it. When you find out you go to your mechanic, you fix it. For an immigrant in Florida today, it might mean that they are separated from their families for life. They might be banned from return to the United States, depending on what is the lack of regulated status. So here we are, Operation Tidal Wave, right? Operation Tidal Wave is the materialization of Florida using something that is a agreement with immigration enforcement to go after people when they are doing their everyday life and detaining individuals and putting them into this deportation machine. Of course, it's going to go bad, and of course, it's going bad, right? No wonder Florida already arrested a US-born citizen. Immigration hold.
Yeah, I think it was Jose Gomez from coming in. He came in from Georgia to Florida to work, and they detained him and for saying that he was an unauthorized alien in Florida. Now, if you just put a pin on that real quick, they were able to do this because of SB 1718, or is SB 1718 not in effect? Because that's something that the nuance on how Florida was still able to say that he was an unauthorized alien, even though I thought 1718 was not in effect.
Yes, so they did that. Wow, there is a lot for us to unpack there. Clarify this. They did this under a law that is it's currently held and should not be implemented because there is a court order, and at the time that Juan Carlos was arrested,
Mm-hmm.
was already a court order from the federal court
Mm-hmm.
that this law is likely unconstitutional, so it cannot be implemented. When a law is unconstitutional or it's on hold and not implemented, means not implemented by anyone,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
choose going around and saying, I am now trying to implement this law, right? Neither can law enforcement do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were not allowed to use that law. But there is a difference, Chip, between the 2023 law, 1718,
Mm-hmm.
and SB4C, which is the law that they used to detain Juan Carlos.
Okay.
SB was passed in a special session here this year, and it criminalizes the actual immigrant entering the state or re-entering the state if they don't have a regulated status. The SB 1718 that was passed in 2023 criminalized the person transporting an immigrant. So
Okay.
2 layers of criminalization.
Okay. La co-host, does that make sense to you? Because
Yes, it does.
Please, I need
No. There's
here because I'm looking at her like, okay, so they were able to take away some of the worst parts of SB 1718 and pass it at its own little law. So then that way they could still criminalize people for entering themselves as an unauthorized person.
Exactly. So the new version that they passed in 2025 has
Do we have it up?
and it has a very similar impact,
Mm-hmm.
which is criminalizing people for moving from one state to another.
Okay.
And the reality is there are several problems with this, right? Number one problem is that there is only one government or one agency or entity
Mm-hmm.
that can legislate immigration, and it's the
Mhm.
federal government.
Mm-hmm.
So the number one problem is that Governor DeSantis may want to act as the president, but he cannot.
Yeah.
Whatever he is signing in Florida does not have the authority that the federal government has. So that's one of the reasons why SB4C and that section of SB 1718 are held. They are not to be implemented yet because that section is likely violating that clause that says that the federal government regulates immigration. The
Yeah,
other
and
is movement of people. Sorry, la co-host.
no. I was just gonna share that, just for everyone's reference, right? So, like, this is coming up from the Florida Senate.
Yes,
As
I
of
thought it
right,
come up twice. I wasn't sure if that was the immigration one or which one was that.
no, this is SB 1718, right? So, as of right now on the Senate, it's as of May 3rd, indefinitely postponed and withdrawn from consideration, right? So, this is just going to Renata's point that this isn't in effect right
So
now.
let
This
me-
isn't.
I don't know if I can see.
This is harm to
Oh no,
minors.
that is no. That's a different bill because your year
Okay.
there is 25. So 1718, for you to see the actual chapter that was
Yeah.
passed in 2023, you need to change the date to Bill 1718, and on the top you need to put 2023.
See?
Okay.
You know what? This right there is telling us something.
Mhm.
Look at the mess that the state of Florida is doing in trying to do something that the state of Florida doesn't even have the power to do, which is regulate immigration.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All this bill, right? All this mess should not even exist in the first place.
Exactly. At the end of the point, yeah, all these 17, 18, all the trying to pass SB4C, they're trying to, like I said, encroach into the federal government's job. And that is, but they're also going, but they're not just like trying to go like, beyond the government. They're also using, and we want to pull this up, the 287G program for local law enforcement to be able to work closely with immigration. And that's something that it was something that's been in the books for a while, but especially since Trump came into office, more and more police departments, including college campuses, have been working with law enforcement Can you tell us a
Yeah.
little more about what you're seeing with that on the ground?
Yeah. So that one, the partnership with ICE. Let's talk about this program for a little.
Hmm.
Was first created in 1996.
Okay.
So we have
Bill
30.
Clinton.
Yes, it was the last.
I'm sorry. I'm
Administration.
sorry. It's just that so many people in my life and so many horrible programs all go back to Bill Clinton. People, oh my gosh. I need to do a whole episode on what did Bill Clinton do to us? Because we talk about Reagan and maybe we'll talk about Bush and we'll talk about Obama, but man, Clinton's got this weird history with immigration where he's like squeaky clean, but that dude screwed over so many people. And I'm watching my language because I respect a deputy director of FLIC, but I'm gonna curse so much right now. And the co-host knows that this is probably the first time I've gone 28 minutes without cursing.
So yes, so 287Gs have been here for 30 years.
Yeah.
What they are law enforcement, local law enforcement, the people who's supposed to keep our neighborhood safe and to look for neighborhood safety, sign an agreement with ICE in which they say, okay, we're gonna be now taking the tasks of the federal government and we're gonna help you with immigration enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that there are different types of agreement. So there is one type of agreement that law enforcement would say, if somebody comes to our jail system, we're gonna look before we release them and see if these people have any issues, and we're gonna hold them for ICE. This is one. There is another one that gives the agents the power not only to check those who are detained, but actually to check anyone for their immigration status.
Mm.
So, which means if I am not in jail, that law enforcement can, for a reason that they believe that I could be undocumented or not, they can run through their databases and they can then investigate and interrogate on my immigration status and possibly detain me.
So wait,
They,
so even so a police officer right now could just be like looking through the let's say FLIC website and go, I don't like FLIC, whatever reason, whatever, look up people's like on the website kind of thing. I'm not trying to give an idea, but I'm just saying like essentially like that. Like, they just look up anyone, or do you have to come into contact with them in some sort of like traffic stop or stuff like that, or
let's use the traffic stop, which is
okay,
like a very real one, right? That
okay,
with confidence is that somebody is driving and they are in a car accident.
yeah,
Well, it's not their fault. They were
right,
rear-ended. They are in a
okay,
car accident. They didn't commit anything wrong. They were a victim in the car accident.
right,
Florida law enforcement shows up. Florida Highway Patrol shows up.
okay,
And in that accident, they realize that that person does not have their driver's license was issued by another state,
right,
not by Florida.
okay,
And it's one of the states that issue licenses for all. That law enforcement may look into the database whether or not that person has an immigration code.
Gotcha.
And hold that person on the basis of immigration, despite the fact that he's there to resolve that issue that that person was in a car accident.
Yeah.
And this is a clean case, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I say a clean case is that there is a reason why 287Gs exist for 30 years, and most of the United States don't have one.
Mm-hmm.
It's because several states that try to have them have canceled them because they realize that instead of individuals trusting law enforcement, they start not trusting. So when there was an accident, instead of calling the cops, people are running away. Or not calling the cops, they are being the victim, and because they are afraid to call the police. The other part is racial profiling.
Of course.
As you said, like the first thing that came to your mind, right? Can a cop now go to a website and try to sieve through who they think is documented and who they think is without a regular status? So the racial profiling is another issue. For example, when a person is speaking a different language, the assumption that Juan Carlos was not an American, right? That
because he couldn't speak English. Yeah.
Because racial profiling is not something that we admit as a country. It's not
Mhm.
that we accept of the problem with 287 Gs.
Right.
Oh, anything to go off of? Because I'm just listening to
No,
this.
it's funny because whenever I hear and whenever we talk about, I mean, we've talked about it a bunch of times, whenever we talk about these traffic stop situations and, you know, the argument on the other side is always, well, but they're here without authorization and that's what matters and they shouldn't be doing anything wrong and da da da. And it's the context that people don't realize is that a lot of people, most people do actively try to fix their status. They're not just sitting there twiddling their thumbs and just waiting, oh, let's hope I don't get caught. No, people aren't living their lives that way. They're actively trying to work this very complex system that, as we just saw, although I am not an immigration lawyer, I'm a corporate lawyer in my defense. So I don't usually read those statutes, but it's fine. But, you know, as we just saw, I glanced at it because admittedly, I thought that, yes, it's supposed to be coded in a certain way. It said 2025. It was linked to another article that I was looking at earlier. So admittedly thought that it was that and didn't think of even just something like looking up information is complex at this point. Imagine trying to navigate the system when you can barely even understand the language because you're just trying to make a life for yourself. And I think everyone, when all these different policies came out, everyone was on board, or not everyone, people were on board with the mentality of, oh, they're going after quote unquote only criminals. That was the rhetoric that was kind of shared left and right. And that's the posture that they came about with to have support. But as we've seen, that was just a blatant lie left and right. But now, as we've talked about, they keep pushing the needle. So at first it was like, okay, well, it's just criminals. Oh, well, now it's, oh, well, they shouldn't be violating any laws. And now it's, oh, well, like the girl we reported on earlier, you can't make a right turn. God forbid you make a right turn, and that everyone does on red by mistake, and she misses a sign. Now she's in a detention center for a month.
Did you hear today? Just it happened today with Jimena, this girl from Georgia who was driving. She made a right turn. Listen, she made a right turn. People are like, she didn't use a turn signal. She didn't, she didn't.
She made a right on red when she
made a
was
right on red when the sign said don't make a right on red. Whatever right on red she made. Then she was pulled over. They saw that she did not have a license. They took her in, read her status, and now she's actually in the same detention center as her father. Her father was also detained for going over the speed limit and put into a detention center. And I reported on this, and I talked about how they try to get DACA and they try to get a work visa, and they when they were in Mexico, they were trying to come here, but they couldn't find, because there was not a lot of statuses and a lot of ways to come here. So they wanted to give their daughter the best life because they thought that she was a genius almost. That she could be. And I posted that, and what was really heartbreaking is that a lot of people could not see any of that. They was just like, she was undocumented, right? Okay, nothing else matters to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how have we gotten so cold? And also, people don't know the laws. Again, being in the country undocumented is not a criminal offense. It's a civil offense. Like, parking violation,
it's jaywalking.
It's jaywalking. And also, I got to check this out. And I'm telling you this, Renata, because you might get a kick out of this, and I got to verify, but I'm pretty sure it's real. We saw something that Kristi Noem, the Department of Homeland Security secretary, has over 20 speeding violations in one single year, had multiple court appearances that she did not show up to, and had multiple warrants for her arrest for driving violations. So you're looking at these things and you're like, and people in the comments are like, yeah, but she's a US citizen. And that's where it blows my mind. And people don't realize that in those two cases, you can see that one is a person who is undocumented, who did everything else right, and a US citizen who literally committed more crimes in a single year in traffic violations than probably every single person I know in my life. And people don't realize that how much, U.S. citizens do commit crime at a much higher rate than immigrants or undocumented people. And just these two cases show you, but people are so brainwashed and thinking, well, I hear undocumented, and that's enough for me to say that this person deserves no leniency.
And here is the thing, is that constitutionally, we have rights. Period. Everyone does it. From the moment that our neighbors, fellow Americans, start saying, oh, due process applies to A, but it doesn't apply to B.
Mm-hmm.
Or the right to remain silent applies to A or not to B.
Mm-hmm.
Your right to speech applies to them, but not for you. And from the moment that we start separating who gets basic fundamental rights, not only our values are under attack, but our everyday life becomes very dangerous. Because we are really disrupting the fabric of trust. Because one of the reasons why you can drive safely, right? And you can have the confidence that you're going to go from one state to another or to your work every day is that you know that a tiny mistake, such as turning right when there is a sign that you oversaw, or being involved in a car accident that it's not your fault, we're not going to flip your life upside down. Because we kind of understand things in a degree, right? We are not going to that space, that mindset, that barbaric, because that's barbaric, mind where a tiny mistake can cost you, your family, your life quality, can send you back to possibly a death threat. Like that is, to me, is something that folks need to understand. Like basic values are something that we need to champion always. And that is not,
we don't have time, so I do want to get to a few more questions that we have to. I guess it just, in your opinion, just overview, just how is the immigrant community, how is it feeling right now in Florida with all these things that we talked about, 287G, U.S. citizen getting picked up, how is the immigrant community sort of feeling right now, reacting to it? Are you seeing, honestly, and if you can talk to us or not, are you seeing an exodus of immigrants leaving Florida, under these hostile times? And, just what are you seeing?
So we hear anecdotally, right? People saying, oh, I went to the bakery, the Brazilian bakery, and it was so empty. Or I went to the supermarket or the job sites. We did see a report that some of our produce is not being picked because there are not. So that stuff we hear about. In regards to sentiment, Floridians who are immigrants are experiencing a chaos that those of us who are not immigrants are experiencing as well. It's a chaotic moment. One day there is tariffs, one day there is not. One day there is federal government jobs are being cut. The other day they are not. There are like fights in court, right? And one thing that people need to understand, Florida is home to hundreds of thousands of people who came to the United States following specific rules and who are given the adequate entry. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans who are fingerprinted, who did their process, who got their background check, and who the federal government said, you have the authorization to stay here temporarily, but you do, and to work here. Same thing with our neighbors who are Haitians, Nicaraguans, Cubans. And now the administration is trying to, one, cancel those status, or two, expedite them. To say that, oh, before I gave you the opportunity to stay here until 2026, I changed my mind. Now you go. What people need to understand is that these are not folks that are hiding in a closet. Those are people who are driving our kids to school, who are taking care of the elderly in the nursing homes, who are in our universities, who are teachers, substitute teachers, who are in the nail salon. So we have an entire community and ecosystem that is powered by those authorized workers, individuals who got the proper procedure that was available to them, and who are all of a sudden at the verge of losing their status. That's baffling, and it's by governmental choice. This is not even, those are not even individuals who don't have status at all. Those are individuals who have status and who now at the verge of losing it. So the community is confused, right? So FLIC, we have to do lots and lots of education. Our goal is to empower and not generate panic. Our goal is to make sure that our hotline is equipped so we can inform, that our hotline is equipped to connect people with legal counsel so they can review their cases, that we are able to trace our community members who are being disappeared, who are kidnapped. Right? So our goal is to make sure that when people are here every day, that they have dignity, but they also feel that they are not constantly a threat of separation, threat of this detention. So education at this moment is very, very important. Because
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And let's see here. We have two questions we're going to ask you. Any advice for activists and people that want to help during these times? Let's try and finish on some positive stuff. We actually have one more question about positivity because we like to finish like, okay, so yeah, let's anything that you feel like people can do during these times to help, and yeah, and how can they get involved? To anyone that may feel, at home feeling desperate.
yes, those questions are awesome because we have both the opportunity to do the work in your dinner table, which means what la co-host mentioned is that this complexity of status. If people could get a pathway to dignity, they would choose that. It's not that people don't want it.
Yeah.
It's have it, that pathway. So the opportunity to learn, to listen to the podcast, and it's Mother's Day lunch, and that's the time that you talk to your parents. It's at your coworker coffee time, that's the time that you're talking to your peers. Is that spreading information and letting our circle of friends and family very, very aware that we're talking about individuals who share our values, who want to make Florida a true home for all, who want to make the United States a home for themselves, right? Who are seeking safety, who are entrepreneurs, who are working and celebrating culture. So that is an activism that doesn't need to have like a major banner or a flag, right? It's a matter of sharing a story. Do you know that a US born citizen was arrested? And this is racial profiling. This is a violation of a court order. That is an erosion of our democratic systems. So that conversation is one layer. The other layer is that there are so many things happening on the streets. People are mobilizing and showing that they are standing against a lot of those atrocities. And we need to do that. We need to do that not because we're going to change things on a blink, but it is because we need everyone in our communities to know that they are not alone. The space that has been created over after months of quarantine and digitizing, like going to a very digital world, people are feeling very isolated. And in a moment of chaos, it's very easy to be overwhelmed and think that we are not doing enough or there is not enough people with us. One way is to express publicly. Our folks need to know. And lastly is volunteer. Volunteer. We have plenty of needs and requests. Lots of people need to support with their paperwork. Here in Florida, we have about 1 million people who are eligible to become US citizens and who don't, because they have difficulty completing their forms. They need support with their fees, right? So volunteer, take the time. At our website, you can see under our events, we have volunteer orientation every week. It happens online. And then several opportunities to volunteer both in person and via Zoom in one of our clinics. And that support is dearly appreciated.
Yeah, we have it up, but can you just tell people the website?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you go, Laco?
Oh, yeah, no, no estaba segura.
I'm gonna give it to Renata. Go ahead.
Please, Renata, please, yes.
Yes, our website is FLIC, FLIC.org. And there you can have our section of events where you can register for training. We also have an advocacy section where you can contact legislators about different issues, write letters directly to legislators who serve you. And you can also get help if you know anybody who needs support. You have our hotline phone number and also resources, know your rights resources in multiple languages. So everything is there in our website.
Awesome.
Amazing.
And you know what? We usually finish it off with like the last question is like, what is making you happy? Because we want to leave on like something uplifting. And I'm gonna go first because what's making me happy is actually something that you said. Be out there with community, go march. Volunteer. And this weekend, I got the opportunity since January 20th to actually go out and surround myself with people who are also in the fight and who are also talking. And like I said in the beginning, it was just at first, yes, we all felt the same anxiety and then just the dread. But after like a few hours together, we were like, remember, we are joyous, we're great people, we're amazing, we're not the things that they're telling us. And then by like a day and a half of us like talking and marching, like I felt so revitalized. And I was like, you know what, it's nice to see so many people in this fight, and I know I'm not alone. And it just felt really, really great to see how many people out there are like, I want to do more, I want to do more. And I think there's more people out there trying to do good and figure out how to change things than there are those trying to destroy it. So that made me feel really, really good. What about you? Let's go. What's making you happy, Renata?
I think it's community too.
Mhm.
It's best weekend on May Day, extending to Saturday as well. There were several rallies, and I had the opportunity to be side by side with labor unions, right? Celebrating workers. And in Florida, so many workers are immigrant. And even if they were not, right? Like celebrating labor and being together and celebrating that vision that we can contribute to our communities through our work, through our culture and everyday community, everyday interactions, right? Like culture and everything. So being with community is bringing me joy. The rallies from May Day weekend really filled my bucket. I'm hoping for some more, and I hope that folks are encouraged to join too, because I know that they are happening and happening pretty much everywhere. So we just need to find one.
Amazing. Yeah, go find a march. Go get involved. Awesome. What about you, the co-host? What's making you happy this week?
Well, I don't feel like I have as profound answers as you.
I didn't want to tell you but you also had a community.
No.
weekend.
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
I did have a community weekend, and ironically, it wasn't necessarily political based. It wasn't necessarily specific to the movement. It was kind of a reprieve on my end, just kind of a step away from the work that we're doing, kind of spending time with friends. But I will say, over the weekend, I was in New York and visiting a bunch of friends, and we were at a music event. And of course, New York is a melting pot. We're in the middle of Brooklyn during the daytime, and for a moment, for that day at least, there was this sense of like normalcy that was kind of beautiful and kind of a breath of fresh air. And admittedly, I acknowledge very much my privilege of just being able to feel normal in this space, at least for a day, right? But like kind of looking around and this sense of just instant community that is Brooklyn, New York. I don't know. I feel like if you're a New Yorker, you kind of know that energy of just we are a melting pot and we embrace it. And it was beautiful. You had people from every walks of life. You had older folks, younger folks, you had people from every ethnic group, you had LGBTQ, non-binary, like a fabulousness left and right.
Community.
And it was beautiful. And it
Yeah.
was everything I needed to be reminded of, that there is still these pockets of spaces that people embrace diversity, embrace each other's differences, embrace every type of community, that there are people that are like that out there. And so it was kind of a nice reminder of, there's still hope.
Yeah.
Whether it is in kind of generic social spaces, or whether it is at May Day rallies, whether it is in this kind of forum where we have beautiful people like Renata, who's spending her time with us and gave us the kind of insight that there are organizations like FLIC, there are individuals even that are doing the work, right? And there's hope, right? And we have to hold on to that. We have to lean into that even, because they want us to fall back.
Yeah, and and I told her when she's like, "Oh, I felt so bad," and I was like, "No, look, I know it sounds cheesy and it's a song, but we do gotta fight for our right to party, because to me, like she said, she was at a party with like LGBTQI members, Black, Latino, everything. That's the party I want all of us to be able to go to and feel comfortable to go into any bar, any club, and know we're not gonna be harassed, men, women, straight, you know what I mean? Like, we all gotta fight for a right to be able to party with each other and just have fun. But we have to get rid of all the stuff that divides us and the negative things and really find these communities. So again, thank you. I feel great talking to you today. This is making me happy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your expertise. Anything you want to tell to the people before we leave today?
Thank you both. Just keep up the good energy, the good attitude, and keep forming our communities, because that's what we need, right? Reliable information, good conversations, so we can go back to the dinner table and do the job that needs to get done.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And remember to check out flic.org for more information. Hey, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Renata. Thank you, the co-host.
Thank you.
It was a great episode. We will see you all next week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.